Well, good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson, and thanks for inviting me into your living room, your pantry, your treehouse, wherever you power up your screen. I'm just glad you're watching. Well, tonight we're going to talk with a former police officer who's become a huge presence on social media with over 4 million followers and subscribers. It's not the type of transition you would normally see. His name is Brandon Tatum, and he offers up a mixture of commentary and some really good merchandise on his YouTube channel. You should check it out. Brandon, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
You know, your service with the Tucson, Arizona Police Department ranged from working the streets to SWAT teams and then police training. How did you get from the squad room to the public square?
Well, Pastor Alan Jackson, thank you so much for having me on. I love you so much, man. You are one of the inspirations for me every time I wake up, because pastors around the country are afraid to tell the truth. And I just thank you for it. I had to say it. I think it's only God's grace and mercy that he had on my life and his divine direction that led me to even be a police officer, and then from being a police officer to doing what I do now. But it all started with, serving my country and serving my community with my life. And that made me more patriotic, made me more appreciative of life and appreciative of being an American. And with that came making a living and making a paycheck and taxes, and all of those things made me more politically involved. And being around a lot of the other police officers who were conservative, it really opened my eyes up to make me realize that I'm a lot more conservative leaning than I was liberal leaning. And from that point moving forward, I started to get more engaged in politics. I went from believing I was on the left side to being a Republican, registered Republican, and voted Republican. And what really sparked the change and transition was me making a video. And I'd never done social media before. I wasn't a video guy. I had nothing to do with it. I was actually being lazy, because normally I'll just text, write a text of the post I wanted to put out. But after going to the Trump rally, I was so blown away about the experience that I had that I said, look, I have to make a video about this, and I'm going to put it out and see where it goes. And lo and behold, it ended up getting millions of views.
Well, I'm curious, as a black man, how did you feel when former President Barack Obama came out just prior to the election, really with a shame-based message to the men in the black community if they were going to vote for Donald Trump? Did you think he was giving wisdom to a generation, or what was up with that?
Well, we haven't looked up to Barack Obama for a very long time. At first, thinking about him being the first black president was, even me growing up believing that was a great change in America, and it was a great sign of our progress. And we thought, because he was very charismatic, very smart, we thought that he would do something great in America. But if anybody that have both of their eyes open and they're paying attention to what's going on, we saw him degrade race relations in this country and not help unite us. And watching his failed policies and watching him not really live up to the expectation that most people had of him made a lot of people walk away from him and not really listen to what he had to say. And every election year, instead of him operating with integrity, he's peddling lies that benefit only the Democrat side. And when you see that, you lose trust for the guy. You expect him to be honest about the things that he truly believes in. And when you watch him get on television and say that Joe Biden is doing very well and he's capable of being the president, and then you see what happened with Joe Biden, you realize, man, this guy's not telling us what he really feels. He's trying to push us as if we're ignorant into believing what he wants us to believe. And him coming out and saying that black men, because they're not supporting Kamala Harris, are misogynistic or a misogynist is the most insane thing that I've ever heard. He would have had a winning message if he would have said, I understand the concerns of the economy. I understand the concerns that you have of her lack of professionalism in some cases, but let me remedy that with some facts and evidence that will convince you that you're going to live a better American dream experience with her being in office. You could be able to put food on the table for your children in a way in which you haven't before with her being in office. Don't insult my intelligence by deducing what I believe in a candidate down to, her sex or what color skin she has.
Well, Brandon, you have been an enthusiastic supporter of Donald Trump and a strong voice in the social media. In fact, you have jumped into the immigration mess recently, taking issue with the governor's decision in Arizona to not help with any deportations, which she was asked about recently on ABC.
Well, I think the diversion of law enforcement from their the work that they do every day to keep our communities safe. People hiding in fear. We saw that under previous state policies here, and it harms communities.
Brandon, it wasn't just the Arizona governor. The governor of Massachusetts was asked about deporting others who were here illegally, committing all sorts of crimes, and she seemed to barely care about the people who voted her into office, saying that it was unfortunate that from time to time things will happen. It's a bit shocking to hear them take a pass on their most important duties, keeping people safe. What do you suppose has happened to them? They've forgotten about the people?
1,000%. They forgot how they got there, and they forgot who they work for. I mean, these people get a level of power, and then they believe that they have ultimate power, and they believe now it's their state, and they're going to run it the way they want to run it. And in reality, you're supposed to be functioning and listen to what your constituents have to say about these issues. That's why they voted for you and put you in office. You don't just go rogue and do whatever you want to do. You still have a duty to uphold the Constitution, uphold what the people of Arizona or the people of Michigan or wherever state that you're running, what they have already deemed a necessity for them. And Katie Hobbs is the most embarrassing governor I have ever experienced. She looks disheveled half of the time she's on television. This time she finally had her hair done, but she don't have her thoughts together. When you hear a person consistently, and this is a governor of a beautiful, amazing state, say, when you say, it's because you're searching for things to say in your mind. These things are not in the forefront of her mind. You know, supporting police is not something that's at the top of mind for her. So she has to go gather her thoughts and try to think of the next thing to say. And it's apparent. It is not even a question that we should secure the border. And securing the border is your love for fellow man. Because the more you have the border open, the more that you have people trafficked into this country, the more that you have coyotes from Mexican cartels making money off of using people and lying to them, deceiving them to make them think that when they come to America, everything is going to be glorious. They're hurting these people. They get into America, they have to be in the shadows. So they do not work for fair wages. I mean, they do not get health care that they deserve. You know, they do not get police responses that they deserve. When I was a cop, when a person who was illegally in this country would get assaulted, attacked, they wouldn't dare call the police for help because they didn't want to get deported. So having these people functioning in our nation, and they're not functioning like an American citizen, and they don't have the rights and supports that most of us get, that's not right either. So what we should do is secure our border and allow people to come into this country in a pathway that's acceptable so they can experience the American dream in a fair way.
Well, Brandon, it seems to me that the open border is the fruit of some other policies. It goes back to things like defund the police and DAs who won't prosecute the crimes that are being committed in our major cities. I'm of the opinion that the police deserve our support. Will you validate that, or am I off base?
1,000%. When you have a person that is sacrificing their entire life, their livelihood, their families, to go out and serve and protect absolute strangers, who wouldn't give them our support? Now, we don't support officers that are out here doing the wrong thing. If you're doing illegal activity, you're shooting people you shouldn't shoot. I don't support that, and nobody should. But the majority of police officers in this nation are everyday men and women like the ones who are watching this show that just want to provide for their families. They just want to see a better America. They just want their communities to be safe. And they're not just making a statement verbally. They're actually putting their life on the line to ensure that that happens. So people that are serving in that capacity deserves respect. And I don't know how we got to a point where we've demonized. Now, I do know why certain politicians have a vested interest to do it. Not because they love the people, it's because they want certain groups and demographics of people to vote for them. They're lying to convince a group of people that they are the party that's going to make a difference. I don't think Black people are unfairly targeted by police officers. That is not a true statement, and it's not backed by any level of evidence. But if you're running for office and you want to convince people through emotionalism that you are the party that they should support, you make up and embellish this boogeyman of a police officer so that you can continue to rescue them from that fake boogeyman for centuries to come. And I think that's where the problem lies. Let's be honest about it. Police officers, generically speaking, are doing an incredible job. We should support them to do a great job and better.
We'll be back shortly with more of our conversation with Brandon Tatum. We've got a lot more to cover. Stay with us. We're back with Brandon Tatum. Brandon, you said that your perspective entirely changed when you became a parent. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's one of the things about growing up and obviously getting saved and learning about what God has called us to do is living it out. And when you live it out through procreating and you have a child that's a blessing from God, it really makes you put things in perspective. One of the things that I did early on, and I know it may sound trivial to some people, but when I was in college, I loved playing video games. I would literally play my NCAA football game every single day of the week. But then when I had a son, I said, you know what? I discarded that game. I took it, I threw it in the trash because my priority was to be the best man that I could be and the best father that I could be. And I had to put away all those childish things that I would do in order to accomplish that goal. And I think it's God's call on my life and other men and women who have children's lives is to serve the next generation and be a good parent to them, raise them up in the way of the Lord, and I think that's the purpose that God has had in our lives. And when we do that, it's no other more fulfilling purpose than to see that come to fruition.
You know, I think we're facing a real challenge in our nation that's not political, it's spiritual. You know, it's not so difficult to father a child, but it's a lifelong commitment to become the father of a child. I've heard you talk about this to men and young men especially. What's your wisdom for those young men on how they can step forward and be a more effective father?
Well, first, you got to get your relationship right with God. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to do them mutually exclusively, but what I'm saying is that you got to work on your relationship with God so you can have that connection and leadership and guidance for you to even be an effective father. And once you do that, then you have to start being honest with yourself about what direction do you want your child's life to go. And it's up to you to try to guide them into that direction. I would also say give grace to your children as well, because we all know when we were kids, we were cutting up and making mistakes, and give a little grace to your children when they make mistakes like you did, and not always have them try to follow in your footsteps and, live vicariously through them. So a little bit of that, a little bit of grace gives them the opportunity to grow and become the people that God has called them to be. But the structure as a father is for you to lead as God called you to lead, and then help your children lead out what God has called them to do.
Well, Brandon, you are a rather outspoken critic or evaluation, at least, of contemporary culture. And there's a lot of voices from elite universities and such telling us how to think. And I think the average American in the heart of this nation has rejected it. Things seem pretty simple, like when we see men competing with women in sports. You were a D1 athlete. Do you think those men should be competing with those women?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, there's a reason that we've differentiated male sports versus female sports. And I'll tell you what, I mean, being a college athlete, I was far better of an athlete than any of the women on as far as strength wise. I was much stronger than any woman. I probably 5 or 6 women together wasn't as strong as me. And I wasn't even the strongest on the football team. So God has made us different. Men have testosterone in our body that runs, and we have more muscle density, you name it. We have a different ability in that area. And I think there's no place for a man that's confused with his identity to be able to get into women's spaces and dominate them. Pastor Jackson, like anytime you see this happening, the women are getting dominated. I mean, they're breaking records. They're winning state championships, like we've seen it happen in Washington State in high school. We've seen it in Oregon State. These men, these boys are identifying as girls and winning state championships. And they're thwarting the ability for young women who have trained their whole life to actually realize the goals that they work so hard for. And so I think that I don't know how we got to this point. It's very clear. If we have an influx of people who are struggling with their identity, why is it not the case where we can create a sport for them? Maybe a category if you're trans, but it doesn't make any sense that you would have a boy get into girl sports and dominate. And the reason why I think it's so apparent is because you never see it in reverse. You never see a girl who's transitioning to being a boy being effective whatsoever in sports. But you always see men who are identifying as girls or women absolutely killing it. And so And I always say Stevie Wonder can see that there's a problem there.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate your courage and your boldness to speak into our culture with a biblical worldview in the face of some pretty serious headwinds. You're making a difference. Thanks for taking some time with us on the program today.
Well, God bless you, Pastor Jackson. Much love to you, and thank you for having me on.
You come back and see us again. We want to keep up with your journey. Next, I've got some personal observations to share with you. Stay with us. I have something of an announcement to make. You may or may not know that thou shalt be kind is not one of the commandments that Moses brought down the mountain. It's not cut in stone. Now, I'm not opposed to kindness. I prefer it. I prefer to receive it, and whenever possible, I try to express kindness to other people. But I think we've embraced a mistaken notion that our assignment in life is to be kind to everyone. And there are times when the truth is more important than being kind. I'll give you an example. If you go to the doctor and he doesn't want to give you bad news, he wants to be your friend, he wants to be certain that you like him more when you leave than when you came in, well, then he's not going to tell you the truth always about your physical health and the changes you need to make so you can be healthier. Well, I'm concerned that in the Christian community, we've adopted this idea that we want to be liked, so we want to be kind, and we avoid the truth in many settings. I believe the best pathway between where we are and a better future for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren is that we choose the truth. The book of Proverbs says to buy the truth and not to sell it. Well, there are times when we are sharing the truth or receiving the truth, we think the person speaking to us isn't being as kind as we would like him to be. It's not an easy message. We don't like it. But the reality is the truth, Jesus said, would bring freedom to our lives. So here's my suggestion. Let's decide that we don't have to be unkind, we don't have to be mean-spirited, but we're going to be a people of the truth. And we will choose the truth even when the message that it brings isn't always something that causes people to like us more. We can work through our disagreements. We can overcome those things. But if we self-censor and refuse to tell the truth because we think we're being kind, we're really abandoning our assignment to be salt and light, to be people of faith. If we'll choose the truth and share it with love, I truly believe there are more reasons for hope than despair. When we return, I'm going to read some of your emails. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Your emails are a highlight in our program. Kathleen from Warrington, Pennsylvania writes, "Hi, Pastor. I've been watching AJM for years, and now it's great to see Alan Jackson now as well. Thank you for your meat and potatoes preaching, not just the dessert. My question is, do people realize even heaven has borders? God bless you and yours, and God bless America again. I have hope." It's a great point, Kathleen. Heaven does have borders, and any sovereign nation that plans to exist over any length of time has to have borders as well. One of the most troubling things to me in this season while our border has been open is those who have insisted on our border have first lied to us in the media telling us it is secure, and then they've never really told us why they want the border open. We've seen millions of people pour into our country with a devastating impact in many respects, and no one's ever said why they'd opened that border. I pray we have the wisdom now to close the border and return to an orderly immigration policy. It'll make all of us stronger. Sharon writes, "Back in the 80s, my daughter got pregnant and her boyfriend wanted her to get an abortion. I took her to a counselor and she ended up keeping her baby girl, later giving her up for adoption. I now have a beautiful 35-year-old granddaughter in my life. Praise the Lord." It's a great reminder, Sharon, of the sanctity of human life. Sometimes the circumstances are very difficult and the challenges before us are not easy. But the choice to honor life and to celebrate that great gift that God gives to us always writes a better future. I pray we're waking up to that reality. Well, make sure to send your emails to comments@alanjacksonnow.com. From all of us here in Nashville, thank you for joining us tonight, and you have a wonderful evening.